Postgame pod time. White Sox lose 8-3 to the Minnesota Twins on Tuesday night down at Rate Field. I am Greg Miraz, your host, and somehow my microphone is as off-kilter as the White Sox bullpen was this evening. I was at the game. I gotta say, unfortunately, this is a game that the White Sox should have won. Now, you're probably looking at the score and saying, well, no, it was an 8-3 final. That's a 5-run game. That's not a game that the team that you saying should have won. But I'm going to make the argument that one inning lost the game. And in reality, there have been a couple of games this year where it has felt like one inning has made the biggest difference in the game. It was the 8th inning in the second game of the Angels series. It was the 8th inning in the third game of the Angels series. And it was the 6th inning tonight. And I think, though, that unlike the 8th inning in both of those Angels losses, that was where one play made the difference in the game. One play effectively. Well, the Saturday Angels game, it was 2 plays. The Sunday Angels game, it was the home run. The 6th inning tonight was the most frustrating inning of baseball that the White Sox have had the entire year. And I will break down the 6th inning in just a little bit. But before we get there, I want you to like the show on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure you go back and listen to past episodes if you want to hear my dulcet tones, or if you don't think that they're dulcet tones, just hear me ramble and bamble on about the White Sox and whatever I decide to talk about, because that's what we do here on Believe in White Sox. We talk about the Sox, whether it's good or bad. And as I've gotten into this post-game groove, it's frustrating when you feel like this team plays the type of game that it should win. And the White Sox starting pitching has been phenomenal. Everybody was talking about it. 23 innings entering today of the starting pitchers not allowing an earned run, and that got to 28 2/3 today. Shane Smith was a Rule 5 pick from the Brewers, and I don't know what was expected out of him, but what he gave you as the number 5 starter today was awesome. 5 2/3 innings. He exited not having allowed an earned run and ended up being 2 earned runs. Just 2 hits allowed. Now, he walked 4, and that was the big problem, and he struck out 3. Shane Smith has the potential to be a very, very good pitcher in this league. That's 4 things. 2 things can be equally true in the words of the great Ralph Barbieri, a former sports talk show host at KNBR in San Francisco, where I grew up. I listened to the Razor and Mr. T growing up. This is actually how Ralph Barbieri, the Razor, actually talked. Believe me, there were people in his day that actually wanted to hear somebody that talked like this actually talk on the radio. But 2 things can be equally true. Shane Smith is a perfect 5th starter at this point in time. But Shane Smith at the same time may not be fully big league ready. Shane Smith was awesome through his first 5 innings. I didn't have his pitch count through 5, but he had 51 through 4. His breaking stuff was awesome. His changeup is really good. I mean, the pitch that he struck out Carlos Correa on in the first inning was phenomenal. But the White Sox had a 3-0 lead, and Smith gets the first 2 guys that he faces in the 6th inning. And his pitch count is not that high. But I go back to opening day, and I go back to how Will Venable managed Sean Burke. Sean Burke threw 73 pitches in 6 innings. In a young rotation, this is not the type of game, the game of baseball that is, this is not the type of game anymore where you can rely on young guys to go out and throw 90 to 105 pitches anytime they go up. And especially early in the year, this is the type of team that you're going to have to be a little bit more conservative with the pitchers. I hate saying that because I disagree with the philosophy. I disagree with the philosophy that you have to be careful and coddle your starting pitchers. But this is the day and age that we're in modern baseball, to where a young starting pitcher in his first, second, or third start is not going to go beyond 80 pitches. Sean Burke got the first two guys that he faced in the sixth inning. And it looked like, and understandably so, if you're Will Venable, you feel like you can rely on him to get through this inning because he's on cruise control. But he had bad command of the zone in his third batter of the inning in Byron Buxton. And Buxton walked. And then Trevor Larnach was the next batter up, and he walked. So you go from 2 on, nobody out, or rather, 2 out, nobody on, with a 3-run lead, to 2 on and 2 out with a 3-run lead. I think that Will Venable made a critical mistake, and really the first critical mistake of his managerial career. Shane Smith was losing command of the zone, and it was probably time for Shane Smith to exit the ballgame. I'm not disputing that removing Shane Smith from the ballgame was the wrong move. By any stretch of the imagination, that's not what I'm disputing. What I'm disputing is the fact that he did not let Shane Smith pitch to Ryan Jeffers. And this is why I feel like that's the biggest problem with what happened in tonight's game. And here's why. I was at the game. I did not see Penn Murphy warm up or start to get really loose until Byron Buxton ended up taking that walk. Penn Murphy effectively got warmed up in one batter. Or you think he got warmed up in the time that Shane Smith was facing Trevor Larnach. If you are going to bring in a relief pitcher, and one where it was a right-on-right situation, you let Shane Smith pitch to Ryan Jeffers. He's the tying run at the plate. I don't think it was enough time to get somebody else up and warm. But Penn Murphy has been the most reliable guy. But unfortunately, the problem was tonight, Penn Murphy wasn't quite warm. And he didn't give up hard contact, but first batter he faces, Jeffers, single. Scores a run. Next batter, Ty France, single. Larnach scores. Jeffers moves up to second. This is not hard contact, by the way. Then Willie Castro comes up, and Castro gets hit by a pitch. That's where I start to get a little bit concerned. Like, was Penn Murphy actually ready to come in the game? And the answer is no. Just based on the way, like, he was not having command issues, but he was just leaving the ball out over the middle of the plate. Edouard Julien then came up. He ends up singling to left. Jeffers scores to tie the game. And then that ties the game. And then Jose Miranda, the 9th-place hitter, singles in 2 runs. And that's it for Penn Murphy. He doesn't record an out. Not only does he give up Shane Smith's win, he ends up taking the loss. And the only way that the White Sox ended up getting out of the inning is the fact that Frazier Ellard ends up throwing the ball to home plate when Edouard Julien is trying to steal home. The Twins literally, with a 2-out rally, scoring 5 runs with 2 out in the 6th inning, tried to steal home. That kept the White Sox in the game. The White Sox had a chance to tie it in the bottom of the 8th inning. Andrew Vaughn singled with 1 out. Andrew Benintendi reached on an infield single. Miguel Vargas put together a great at-bat. He put together a fantastic at-bat, and Carlos Correa on a line drive up the middle made a leaping grab behind the second base bag to prevent at least 1 run from scoring and from potentially putting the go-ahead run on first base. And then Lenyn Sosa ends up striking out. In the 9th inning, You get a Harrison Bader 3-run homer as Brandon Eisert did not look, rather, Eisert started the ninth inning after pitching in the eighth. Jordan Leisure came in and he gave up the homer. White Sox didn't do anything in the ninth. But unfortunately, this is the reality of what White Sox fans are going to have to expect. Like, this is a young team. This team has a lot of fight in it. This starting rotation is going to be very good. You got 5 2/3 innings and 2 runs. Granted, it was no runs when he actually left the game, but Murphy gave up the 2 inherited runs. You're getting much better than expected starting pitching. And offensively today, the White Sox were solid. It was about as solid of a 3-run performance as you can imagine. They had 9 hits. They had good situational hitting. Brooks Baldwin in the second and the fourth inning came up in run-producing spots with 1 out and delivered. Had an RBI single in the second and a sac fly in the fourth. Nick Maton hit a shot to right field, a home run, his second of the year in the 5th inning. You could make the argument the White Sox should have probably gotten more runs in that 4th inning. But it's a team that put together timely at-bats and played really good fundamental baseball for the majority of the game. But the unfortunate issue for tonight's game is that the White Sox just simply pushed the wrong buttons at the wrong time. And that's what cost them the win in this game and may have cost them the win in the series. You can't make too much over the 5th game of the year, but I'm going to make a little bit too much over the 5th game of the year. This is a game the White Sox should have won. This isn't a game the White Sox should have lost by 5 runs. Will Venable has done almost everything right to this point in the year. Almost everything right. Tonight was the first game where he mismanaged the situation. If you didn't feel like Shane Smith, I'm mixing up Sean Burke and Shane Smith. Kind of ruins my rant, but we'll finish it up. If you didn't feel like Shane Smith could complete the 6th inning before the 6th inning started, you should have had somebody up in the bullpen before the 6th inning even started. The fact that you got Penn Murphy up when you did and decided that after warming up for all of about 3.5 minutes that he was ready to come in a game and come in a game where the tying run was at the plate, to me was a bad managerial decision. You should have either had Shane Smith pitch to Ryan Jeffers, or you should have had Penn Murphy ready to go a lot earlier than you did. Because the situation that you put Murphy in, not being totally warm on a night that was really cold, allowed him to not be at his best. Put him in an advantageous situation. And in my opinion, that cost the White Sox the game. Because we've seen Penn Murphy when he's been at his best. And when he's been at his best, he has been a very reliable reliever. He was not put in a situation to win the situation. He was not put in a spot where he could win the situation. And that decision may not have necessarily cost the White Sox the game, but it's the main reason why they didn't win it. There are some positives to be taken from this evening. And I do want to talk about Shane Smith because he was fantastic. His stuff looked really good. He pitched about as well as you can imagine, for somebody that is making his major league debut and somebody that's a Rule 5 pick and a smart Rule 5 pick for the White Sox to have him on the roster. His command faltered at times. He did not have full command of the strike zone. He threw 73 pitches. He only had 45 strikes. So that ratio, which I believe is somewhere around 65%, 62%, I was close enough. That's not the type of ratio that I feel like you want as a starting pitcher in terms of balls to strikes. But he got the White Sox through 5 shutout innings, which has been consistent for this pitching staff. The White Sox ended up going 28 and 2/3 innings without allowing an earned run from their starting pitching. Now, their .75 team ERA entering the day is going to shoot up after the fact they gave up a season-high 8 runs, with 6 of those coming from the bullpen. But Shane Smith was really, really good. And I think that the White Sox understand that there's going to be a lot of trial by fire with him. And there may be instances where you're just going to have to live with the command issues that he had. And that's fine by me. Again, the expectation for this White Sox team is not high. I think we're getting a little bit high off our own supply if we're talking about what the White Sox are actually doing and what we expected them to do. The fact that we're utterly not outright just dejected over the first 5 games, I think is a good sign. The fact that I am at least this passionate about this team in game 5 of the season, I still think that you're at a point where every game matters, because every game, if you want to compete, does matter. And there needs to be an urgency from the guys that are on this team that tell you, we can do this. We can be a competitive team. We can keep things interesting. I saw something on Twitter where people said that, oh, this team reminds me a lot of the 2019 club, which was the team before the 2020 team that made the first playoff appearance in 2008. I don't think that there's the same type of star power on this team, but I'll say this. I've seen enough of Brooks Baldwin to tell you that this is somebody that should be playing every single day. Brooks Baldwin is a really good situational hitter. He came up in run-producing situations. I mentioned this in the first part of the show. He came up in run-producing situations in the second and the fourth and got the job done. My biggest thing with anybody, I don't care if you don't get a hit. If you're in a situation where you've got a runner at third with less than 2 outs, and I don't care if you hit the ball, if you hit or do a double play, get the ball in play. Don't strike out. You have to give your team an opportunity to score runs, and that's exactly what he did both times up. He gave his team an opportunity to score a run, and he delivered both times. Once with a hit, once with a sac fly. And he looked really good defensively at shortstop. I would start him at short over Jacob Amaya 8 times out of 10. If you're going to wait for Colson Montgomery's service time to extend before you bring him up, I'd rather have Brooks Baldwin playing shortstop every day. And then once you eventually bring Colson Montgomery up, then maybe there's some sort of situation where Brooks Baldwin's playing second, he's playing third, he's playing a corner outfield spot. Brooks Baldwin should be playing every day at this point. That's how much more valuable I feel like he is than somebody like a Jacob Amaya. Couple other notes. Corey Lee got the start tonight. We were talking about whether or not he would get the start. He got pinch hit for after 2 at-bats. His bat did not look good. Matt Thaiss came in for Austin Slater. They ended up putting Travis Jankowski in Corey Lee's spot, and he went to right, and Thaiss pinch hit for Slater and came in and caught. It just might seem like Corey Lee is not somebody that Will Venable favors. Again, I expect Matt Theis to start at catcher tomorrow because Corey Lee started a night game and tomorrow's a day game. So that's where we're at in terms of that. And then finally, Andrew Benintendi is finally proving his weight in terms of what he's doing so far to start the year. 3 for 4 performance, 2 runs scored. He's looking like a professional hitter. Again, he looks great when he's facing right-handed pitching. And we've been saying this for a while. Andrew Vaughn had a hit, but Andrew Vaughn had 3 strikeouts. I hope it's just a slow start. The home run yesterday was encouraging, but as somebody that, dating back to his time at Cal, was a big Andrew Vaughn fan, I'm starting to become less and less of an Andrew Vaughn fan. And I hate that because I really, really like the guy. And I really want him to succeed at the big league level, and felt like, based on the success he had at Cal, he was going to have a successful big league career. And unfortunately, this just does not seem like it's going to be the case. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Still a long way to go, but his bat looks slow. He swings over a lot of pitches below his knees. Just not the guy that I think a lot of people hoped he would be. But again, at the end of the day, he is who he is, and you have to hope that with this being his 5th year at the big league level, maybe he will find it and turn into what everybody hoped he was going to be. Still a long way to go. Should also mention that it's been a slow start for Luis Robert Jr. He went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts tonight. 5-game sample size. Still a very small sample size. But a disappointing loss in a game that you led 3-0 after 5 innings, losing 8-3. It feels like your starting pitcher deserved a lot better than what he got. White Sox fall to 2-3, and they hope to win the series tomorrow, or if you're listening to this in the morning, later today against the Minnesota Twins. It'll be Sean Burke for the White Sox making his 2nd start of the year. Pablo Lopez, the ace of the Minnesota Twins staff, will be going for the Twinkies. Then it'll be an off day on Thursday, and then off to Detroit for a series against the Tigers. Thanks for listening to this postgame show here on Believe in White Sox as the microphone continues to slide away from me as the game slid away from the White Sox. 8-3 defeat at the hands of the Minnesota Twins. This has been the Believe in White Sox podcast on the Believe Network. Good night from Chicago.